I still remember the moment I first saw it, nestled in a small, elegantly wrapped box on our bedside table one quiet Sunday morning, as the soft light of dawn filtered through our curtains. The necklace was exquisite, a delicate chain of sterling silver that caught the light with a subtle, enchanting glow. Its pendant was a small, intricately crafted medallion. When I asked her about it, she smiled and said it was a gift from her work, a token of appreciation for her dedication and hard work. I should have been touched, proud even, that her colleagues had celebrated her in such a personal way. But as I lifted the pendant to examine it closer, I noticed something that made my heart stutter, a tiny engraving on the back that read, in careful script, "For my always, A." At first, I thought it might be a misprint or perhaps an inside joke, an innocuous inscription that meant nothing more than a playful nod. But as the morning unfolded, the significance of those engraved letters pressed upon me like a weight I couldn't ignore. I sat on the edge of our bed, holding the necklace in trembling hands, and tried to reconcile the image of the generous gift she had described with the message that now spoke directly of another man. My mind raced with questions. Who was A? Had she ever mentioned anyone by that initial? And why, if this was a gift from work, would it bear such an intimate dedication? I remember how the silence of that morning felt like an eternity. The air was thick with unspoken words as I turned the delicate chain over and over, tracing the fine lines of the engraving with my fingertip. The intricacy of the script suggested care and deliberate intent. This was no accidental smudge or a random piece of metal etched in haste. It was a declaration, a hidden message that had been carefully preserved away from prying eyes. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of it all. I thought back to the countless evenings we had spent together, the shared laughs over dinner, the quiet moments of closeness that had once defined our bond. And now, that necklace, once a symbol of pride and gratitude, had become a harbinger of secrets. For the rest of that day, I was a prisoner of my thoughts. Every minute in our otherwise ordinary home was haunted by the memory of that inscription. I found myself watching her more closely, trying to piece together fragments of our conversations for any hint of the man behind that initial A. Had I missed a subtle glance, a half-forgotten story, or a moment when her voice faltered? I couldn't recall anything. Yet the evidence was right there in my hand, a glimmering, beautiful piece of jewelry that held a secret I never asked for. I spent the afternoon in a daze, the normal rhythm of work and routine disrupted by the relentless questions pounding in my mind. I rummaged through our old text messages and emails, searching desperately for any mention of it or of a past that might include another presence. My search felt frantic, almost obsessive, as if I could piece together our shared history and find some reassurance that this was merely a misunderstanding. But the more I searched, the deeper my unease grew. Later that evening, I sat at my desk in the study, the only light coming from the soft glow of my desk lamp and the flickering screen of my laptop. I opened a blank document and began to write down every detail I could remember. When she first mentioned the necklace, her tone when she spoke about it, the way her eyes lit up with what I had believed was genuine pride. I wrote of the small, unnoticed details, the brief moment when she hesitated before accepting it from the delivery man, the way her hand lingered on the box as if reluctant to part with its contents, the tiny sigh that escaped her when she tucked the necklace away in her jewelry box. All of these details, so minute and previously overlooked, began to paint a different picture, a picture that hinted at an inner conflict and a hidden chapter of her life that I had never known existed. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that slowly crept over me like a chill in the dead of winter. I thought about the necklace's engraving again and again, its elegant curves and the intimate message it conveyed. For my always, A. The words echoed in my mind until they became a mantra of doubt and sorrow. Had she been in love with someone else? Was I merely a convenient partner in a life where her heart belonged elsewhere? The thought was a jagged shard that cut through the familiar comfort of our relationship. Unable to bear the mounting tension, I resolved that I needed to confront her, to ask for the truth directly. But how does one begin such a conversation without unraveling completely? The fear of losing everything, our shared memories, our hopes for the future, warred with the desperate need to know the reality behind that inscription. I found myself pacing our living room for hours, rehearsing my words in my head, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the hardwood floors like a prelude to an inevitable confrontation. That night, as the house fell into a heavy, expectant silence and the soft ticking of the clock became the only marker of time, I sat beside her on our worn-out sofa. The air was thick with a tension that neither of us had ever experienced before. I took the necklace from its small velvet pouch and held it out to her, my hand shaking with emotion. "Sophie," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need to know the truth about this necklace. Who is her?" For a moment, Her eyes widened with shock, and I could see a flicker of something, fear, guilt, sorrow, pass across her face. The room seemed to hold its breath as she stared at the necklace, then at me, as if weighing her options in that silent, charged moment. "Daniel, she began, her voice catching in her throat. The words were tangled and halting, and for a long, agonizing moment, neither of us spoke. It was as if the universe had pressed pause, leaving us suspended in a moment that would forever alter the course of our lives. Finally, with tears welling in her eyes, she spoke in a trembling voice. "I didn't want you to find out this way," she whispered. I thought I could keep this to myself. It's not just a gift from work, it's something else, something from my past that I never wanted to burden you with." Her eyes pleaded with me to understand, yet every word was a dagger to my heart. "I've been keeping a secret, Daniel. A secret about who I used to be, and who I sometimes still feel I am." Her confession was raw and heartbreaking, a slow unraveling of a truth that had been hidden behind smiles and routine goodbyes. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. I felt betrayed, hurt, and a deep sense of loss, not merely because of the secret itself, but because it signified a hidden depth in her that I had never truly known. My mind reeled as I tried to process the complexity of her words. How could the woman I loved harbor such a secret? Was it something from before we met? Or was it a part of her that she had long suppressed, a piece of her identity she feared might ruin everything we had built together? The questions piled up, each one a bitter pill that I was forced to swallow. I sat in silence as she continued, her voice a soft, broken murmur. "I met someone a long time ago, a man who meant a lot to me. When I was younger, I was in love, and he gave me this necklace. I thought it was a token of a past that I had left behind, something beautiful to remember a time when I felt alive and cherished. But as life went on, I never told you. I told myself it was just a memory, something that belonged to a chapter one had closed." She paused, swallowing hard as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought if I kept it hidden, I could protect both of us from the pain of the past. I was wrong." The weight of her words sank into me, heavy and unyielding. I felt a storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, betrayal, and an aching confusion that cut through every fiber of my being. I wanted to lash out, to demand that she undo this painful revelation, to erase the inscription that now branded our love with another's name. And yet, as I looked into her tearful eyes, I felt a pang of understanding, a realization that this secret was not simply an act of infidelity, but a fragment of her history that she had been desperate to keep locked away. That night, as the silence of our home wrapped around me like a shroud, I retreated to my study. I sat at my desk and began to write, filling page after page with every thought, every question, every raw emotion that surged within me. I wrote of the necklace and its hidden engraving, of the shock and the overwhelming sense of betrayal that had transformed a simple gift into a symbol of our unraveling. I scribbled down memories of times when she had seemed distant, when her laughter had faded into something hollow, and I questioned every moment we had shared. My words poured out in a torrent, capturing the tumult of my soul, a plea for truth, a cry for answers, and a desperate hope that somewhere in the labyrinth of our past, I could find a way to understand. As the days turned into a blur of painful introspection, I found myself caught between the desire to confront her and the fear that doing so might shatter what remained of our fragile bond. Every night, I rehearsed the conversation in my mind, my heart pounding with both anger and a deep, unspoken longing for reconciliation. I knew that I could no longer live in the shadow of this secret, that I had to face it head-on, no matter how much it threatened to tear me apart. One rainy afternoon, when the world outside was awash in a wash of grey and the pitter-patter of raindrops provided a melancholic soundtrack, I finally decided that the time had come. I sat in our living room, the box containing the necklace and its damning inscription safely tucked away on the coffee table, and I waited for her to return from the kitchen. When she did, her eyes were red from crying, and her hands trembled as she clutched a mug of lukewarm tea. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the secret pressing upon me like a boulder, and said, "Sophie, we need to talk, now, please." Her eyes met mine with a mixture of dread and resignation, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice barely audible, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Daniel. I never meant for you to find out like this." The simplicity of her apology was a stark contrast to the storm raging in my mind. "Who is her?" I asked softly, echoing the words of that engraved note, a question that cut deeper than any accusation. "I need to know why this necklace, this gift, carries the name of another man." Sophie's gaze fell, and I could see her lips tremble as she struggled to form the words. It's from before, she began haltingly. From a time when I was still finding myself, when I made choices that I've tried so hard to forget. I thought I could leave that part of my life behind, that it wouldn't matter, but it does. And I'm sorry I kept it hidden. Her confession was a whisper of a past I had never truly known, a history that now threatened to unravel everything I thought we had built together. 4 hours that night, we sat together in a raw, painful silence, each word slowly peeling back the layers of our shared history. I demanded details, not to punish her, but to understand the full extent of the secret that had been buried in that necklace. She spoke of a young love, of a passion that burned fiercely and then faded into memory, of promises made and broken, and of the longing to recapture a sense of self that she felt had been lost in the mundanity of our everyday life. With every word, my heart ached, and I struggled to reconcile the woman I loved with the stranger who had once given her heart to someone else. The conversation left me numb and shattered, as if the foundation of our relationship had been splintered into 1,000 irreparable fragments. I was overwhelmed by a complex swirl of emotions, anger, betrayal, sorrow, and a reluctant empathy for the loneliness that had driven her to cling to that piece of her past. Yet, amid the pain, there flickered a fragile spark of hope, a tentative belief that if we could confront these secrets with honesty, perhaps we could rebuild a bond that was stronger for having survived the storm. In the days that followed, I retreated into a world of long, solitary walks and fevered reflections. I found myself revisiting the quiet corners of our home, recalling the gentle moments of our early love when every shared laugh and whispered promise had felt eternal. The necklace, once a symbol of a thoughtful gift, now hung in my memory as a reminder of the painful truth that had been hidden in plain sight. I began to understand that true intimacy was not about glossing over the past or pretending that secrets could vanish like morning mist, but about facing our vulnerabilities head-on, no matter how deeply they cut. Every evening, as I sat at my desk, the soft glow of my lamp illuminating my journal, I wrote down my rawest thoughts, my darkest fears, and the desperate hope that we could mend what had been broken. My words became a lifeline, a thread that connected the shattered pieces of my heart as I sought to find meaning in the betrayal. I wrote, "Every secret carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths, and every truth, once revealed, changes us irrevocably." The lines on the page were not just a record of my pain, they were a testament to the possibility of renewal, even in the face of profound loss. Over the next several weeks, Sophie and I tentatively worked to rebuild our connection. We attended counseling sessions together, where we learned to communicate our deepest fears without judgment. Dr. Carter, our empathetic therapist, encouraged us to see that while the past could never be erased, it could serve as a catalyst for growth. "Every scar tells a story," she would say, "and sometimes, those scars can become the foundation for a love that is more resilient than ever before." Her words resonated with me, even as the memory of that engraved necklace continued to haunt every quiet moment. Slowly, the raw edges of our conversation began to soften. We established new rituals, nightly check-ins over a shared cup of tea, walks in the park where the rustling of leaves became the backdrop to our honest exchanges, and even the simple act of sitting together in silence, acknowledging that our pain was a shared burden. I found that each day, with every sincere conversation, the chasm between us narrowed just a little. I started to see the woman behind the secrets, the person who had loved me with all her heart, even as she struggled with the ghosts of her past. Yet, even as hope began to sprout in the ruins of our broken trust, there were moments when the wound would reopen. There were nights when I would lie awake, haunted by the image of that delicate engraving and the whisper of a love long lost. In those moments, I would remind myself that healing is not a destination but a journey, one that demands patience, compassion, and the courage to embrace every truth, however painful. I learned to forgive not by erasing the past, but by understanding that every hidden piece of history was part of what made us who we are. One bright summer afternoon, as the warmth of the sun melted away the lingering chill of winter, Sophie handed me a small box. Inside, nestled among soft tissue, was a replica of the necklace, the same design, the same delicate chain, but with a blank pendant. "Daniel," she said softly, "I want us to create a new beginning, a symbol of our commitment to transparency. I know I hurt you by keeping secrets, and I want to replace that with something real, something we build together." Her eyes, glistening with unshed tears and a fragile determination, met mine, and in that moment, I felt the first true spark of reconciliation. I took the blank pendant and held it in my hand, feeling its cool metal against my skin. It was a promise that the past, with all its pain and betrayal, would no longer dictate our future. Together, we spent that afternoon engraving our own initials on the back of the pendant, a simple act of unity, a declaration that from now on, our story would be written together, in the open, with every secret laid bare and every wound allowed to heal. The process was slow, deliberate, and filled with pauses as we each reflected on the gravity of what we were doing. But as the final letter was etched into the metal, I felt a sense of relief, a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, we could move forward. Now, as I sit in the quiet of an early summer evening with Sophie by my side, the necklace's new inscription gleaming softly in the fading light, I reflect on the tumultuous path that has brought us here. The journey from the shock of that engraved note to this moment of tentative reconciliation has been long and painful, a journey marked by bitter betrayal, countless tears, and the slow, steady work of rebuilding trust. I know that there will be nights when the memory of that secret gift, the hidden love note from another man, will sting like a fresh wound. But I also know that every honest conversation, every shed tear, every act of vulnerability is a step toward healing, a promise that our love, though scarred, can grow stronger in the light of truth. I spent the following days in a restless haze, my every thought consumed by that tiny inscription etched into the back of the necklace. What began as an innocuous gift, one I had admired for its beauty and the promise of appreciation, soon transformed into an unbearable weight of unspoken betrayal. My mind raced with endless what ifs and why didn't she tell me questions. I began to retrace our every conversation from the past few months, scrutinizing every small detail, the gentle yet evasive smile she offered when the necklace was mentioned, the fleeting look of something unreadable in her eyes when she said it was from work, and the way her hand had trembled ever so slightly as she accepted the package that Sunday morning. Each of these fragments, once dismissed as trivial, now burned in my memory with the intensity of a searing accusation. I remember sitting alone at my desk that first night, the dim glow of my desk lamp barely illuminating the scattered pages of my journal, when I dared to write down the single, devastating line. For my always, I repeated it over and over until it became a mantra of despair. How could she, Sophie, the woman I thought I knew inside and out, allow such an intimate message to be hidden from me? My hands shook as I ran my finger over the engraved letters, trying to trace their meaning in vain. Each curve of the script was a dagger, a reminder of a past she had kept secret and a love that was no longer whole. In the days that followed, I became a prisoner to that relentless question. I would rise with the dawn, only to fall back into bed by mid-morning, my mind a tumult of grief and mounting suspicion. I found myself scrolling through our old emails, text messages, and even voice memos, desperate to recall any mention of any hint that might explain this disquieting revelation. Every message, every casual conversation, only deepened the void between the life I believed we shared and the unknown past that Sophie had concealed so meticulously. I began to notice the little things I had once overlooked, a pause in her laughter when the topic of gifts came up, the slight hesitation in her voice when she recalled memories of her childhood, the way she brushed her hand against the necklace as if it were a forbidden relic. The growing chasm between us led to long, solitary walks that stretched into the early hours of the morning. I would wander aimlessly through our quiet neighborhood under the pale glow of streetlights, each step a painful reminder of what had been lost. The rustling leaves and distant hum of traffic provided an eerie soundtrack to my inner torment, as I desperately tried to reconcile the woman I loved with the one whose secret was now engraved on a piece of jewelry. I would pause on empty sidewalks and stare into the night sky, where the stars seemed indifferent to the suffering below, wondering how our shared dreams could be so fractured by an unspoken past. Desperation drove me to confront not only the mystery of the necklace but also my own failure to see the signs. I began to question every moment we'd spent together over the past months. Had I been too absorbed in the comfort of routine to notice her quiet glances at her phone or the fleeting moments when her eyes wandered as if searching for something lost? I agonized over the possibility that I had missed the subtle signals of her inner turmoil, signals that, if only I had been paying attention, might have warned me of the secret that lay hidden in that delicate piece of silver. With each passing day, the gap between what I thought I knew and the reality of her secret life widened until it felt like an insurmountable canyon, echoing with all the unsaid words and unshared emotions. The tension within me built until I reached a breaking point. I knew I couldn't continue living in this state of unbearable uncertainty. I resolved that I must confront Sophie, demanding the truth about that necklace and the meaning behind the inscription. The very idea of a conversation that could shatter our carefully built world terrified me, yet the thought of silence was far more unbearable. I spent hours rehearsing my words in my mind, each line laden with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and the desperate need for understanding. I wondered how she would respond. Would her eyes betray the secret she'd guarded so carefully, or would they remain a mask of practiced innocence? That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold, I finally gathered the courage to speak. I sat down with Sophie in the quiet of our living room, a space that once overflowed with warmth and shared laughter but now felt cold and oppressive. I held the necklace in my trembling hand and looked up at her, my heart pounding as if it were trying to break free from my chest. "Sophie," I began, my voice strained yet resolute, "we need to talk." Her eyes, once so full of familiar kindness, flickered with something I couldn't immediately decipher, fear, perhaps, or sorrow. "That necklace, the one you said was a gift from work, there's something written on it that I don't understand. It says for my always, eh? What does that mean?" For a moment, the world around us fell silent, as if time itself held its breath. I watched her face closely, searching for any sign of truth in the way her eyes darted away, the slight tremor in her lips. Sophie hesitated, and then her expression crumpled into a look of profound regret. "Daniel," she whispered, voice barely audible, "I never wanted to hurt you. I made a mistake by keeping that part of my past hidden. It stands for Andrew, someone I loved a long time ago, before we met. It was a piece of my life I thought I'd left behind, something I meant only for myself. I was ashamed and scared to tell you, and I thought if I could just bury it, everything would be fine." Her confession struck me like a thunderbolt. I felt a surge of emotions, anger at the deception, sorrow for the lost honesty, and a deep, aching betrayal that reverberated through every fiber of my being. "So, you never considered that I deserved to know?" I asked, my voice raw with hurt. "That I wasn't enough?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears, and for a long, agonizing moment, I saw only regret and fear. "It wasn't like that, Daniel," she pleaded softly. "I thought I could keep the past separate from our life, that it was just a memory that didn't affect us. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." The room was heavy with the weight of her admission. I sat there, grappling with the truth that had upended everything. In that moment, I realized that our relationship had been built on assumptions, on the belief that our shared life was transparent and complete, when, in reality, it was marred by secrets and suppressed histories. I struggled to reconcile the image of the woman I had loved with the revelation of a past so different from what I had known. Anger surged through me, but so did a profound sorrow, not just for the betrayal, but for the realization that she had been hurting, that she had felt the need to escape into a part of herself I had never seen. 4 days after that confrontation, I was consumed by a tumult of emotions. I oscillated between the burning need for retribution and the equally intense desire to understand her pain. I spent long hours in solitude, writing feverishly in my journal, trying to untangle the complex web of love, regret, and betrayal. Every line I wrote was a battle between the part of me that wanted to erase the past and the part that longed to heal and rebuild. I wrote, "Our love was once a safe harbor, but now I see it was built on fragile hopes and unspoken fears. How do we mend a bond that has been cracked by the secrets of our souls?" Those words echoed in the quiet corners of my mind as I questioned everything I once held dear. In the midst of my inner turmoil, I sought the counsel of friends and a therapist. I confided in Carmen, a longtime friend whose honesty was both a comfort and a mirror. "Daniel," she said, her eyes reflecting a mix of pity and resolve, "sometimes the wounds we carry are deeper than we realize. Your heart is hurting not just because of Sophie's secret, but because it was never given the chance to know her fully. You need to talk, to let her tell you everything, even if it means facing the parts you're not ready for." Her words, though gentle, stirred in me a realization that perhaps this betrayal was not a simple act of infidelity, but a symptom of a deeper disconnection, a failure on both our parts to communicate our true selves. As the days turned into weeks, Sophie and I began the arduous process of rebuilding our connection. It was not a dramatic, cinematic reconciliation, but a slow, painful journey of tentative conversations, shared silences, and the gradual dismantling of the walls that had grown between us. We returned to our old routines with an added weight, a deliberate effort to be more present, to share our vulnerabilities without fear of judgment. We sat together in the evenings, our discussions ranging from the mundane to the deeply personal. I learned about the ghosts of her past, the memories of a time when she had loved and lost, the tender moments with Andrew that had once ignited her soul, and the crushing guilt that had led her to hide that part of herself away. In turn, I confessed my own fears, of not being enough, of being betrayed, and of losing the woman I thought I knew. Our therapy sessions with Dr. Ramirez became the cornerstone of our slow recovery. "Healing is a process, not a destination," she would say, her voice soft and compassionate as she urged us to confront our innermost wounds together. "Every secret, every unspoken fear, is a step on the path to understanding. Only by facing them can you build a future that is honest and whole. Her words were a balm to my aching heart, guiding us through the darkness of our mutual hurt. Gradually, as autumn deepened into a cool winter, the sharp edges of our pain began to soften. We started to celebrate small victories, a quiet dinner where laughter returned, a spontaneous walk in the snow under a canopy of soft white, and even moments of playful banter that reminded me of the love we once shared. I began to see in Sophie's eyes a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who was vibrant, passionate, and unafraid to show her true self, even when that self was scarred by past mistakes. One particularly poignant evening, as a light snow fell silently outside, Sophie handed me a carefully folded letter. "Daniel," she said, voice trembling yet determined, "I've written everything I've never had the courage to say, to explain why I did what I did, to share the parts of me I kept hidden for so long." I unfolded the letter with trembling fingers, each word laden with raw honesty and remorse. In her words, I read of the profound loneliness that had haunted her, the quiet desperation of feeling invisible in the crowd, and the conflicting pull of a past that had once defined her in ways she could barely admit even to herself. She wrote of Andrew, a name that now echoed painfully in my mind, as a fragment of a life that had been both beautiful and devastating, a love that had taught her the fragility of passion and the harsh cost of losing oneself. Every sentence was a revelation, a glimpse into the hidden chambers of her heart that I had never known existed. As I read, I felt a storm of emotions, a deep, searing hurt mingled with a reluctant empathy for the pain that had driven her to seek solace in isolation. It was as if her secret life had been a desperate cry for freedom, a way to reclaim a part of her identity that she feared was slipping away under the weight of our expectations. I closed the letter, my eyes burning with unshed tears, and for the first time, I truly understood that our journey toward healing would require us both to face our vulnerabilities head-on. In the weeks that followed, our home slowly transformed from a battleground of unspoken grief into a space where tentative hope began to take root. We set aside time each day for open conversations, unhurried, honest exchanges about our fears, our regrets, and the small, often fragile moments of joy that still flickered between us. We took long walks in the crisp winter air, where the quiet of nature allowed us to reconnect without the distractions of our daily lives. Every step we took was a reminder that the path to forgiveness was long and winding, but that with each honest word and shared tear, we were rebuilding a foundation that might one day support a love even stronger than before. I, too, embarked on a journey of self-discovery. I attended individual therapy sessions, where I was forced to confront not only the betrayal but also my own complacency, my failure to see the subtle signs of her inner struggle. I learned that true intimacy requires constant effort, that the quiet moments of neglect can sometimes breed a chasm of misunderstanding. In those sessions, I wrote down my reflections, acknowledging that while I had loved her with all my heart, I had also taken for granted the necessity of always asking, always listening. My journal became a trusted confidant, its pages a mosaic of pain, insight, and a burgeoning resolve to rebuild my trust, not blindly, but with cautious hope. As the heavy winter slowly yielded to the gentle promise of spring, a transformation took shape in our relationship. One bright, clear afternoon, with the air perfumed by blooming flowers and the sky a brilliant blue, Sophie and I sat together on our back porch. The tension that had once gripped our every conversation had eased into a quiet, almost tender silence. "Daniel," she said softly, "I want you to know that I'm committed to being completely transparent from now on. I realize now that secrets only create distance between us, and I don't want to lose you because of my past." I took her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, and replied, "I want that too, Sophie. I know we have a long road ahead, and there will be moments of pain, but I believe that if we are honest with each other every day, we can build a future that honors both our past and our hopes." That day marked a turning point, a tentative step toward healing that felt as delicate as a bud in spring. We decided together that every piece of our history, every mistake and every hidden truth, would be a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. We began to craft new rituals, a nightly ritual of writing down one thing we appreciated about each other, weekend check-ins where we discussed not only our plans but also our emotions, and even joint sessions where we set goals for our future, always with the promise of openness and honesty. Every evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, I would watch Sophie as she tended to our small garden. The simple, rhythmic act of nurturing life reminded me that love, even when marred by betrayal, has the power to regrow, to be reshaped into something resilient and true. I realized that our scars, etched into our hearts by hidden secrets and painful confessions, were not marks of irreversible failure but badges of our capacity to endure, to learn, and ultimately, to love again. Now, as I write these final words in the soft glow of an early summer evening, I reflect on the arduous journey that has brought us to this fragile moment of renewal. The necklace with its haunting engraving has become more than a symbol of past deceit. It is now a reminder of the lessons learned, the importance of honesty, and the unwavering strength that lies in vulnerability. I know that there will be moments when the memories of betrayal will surge like a storm, when the fear of hidden pasts will threaten to unravel our progress. Yet, in those moments, I will hold on to the truth we have forged together, the promise of a future built on relentless honesty and mutual respect. This is my final confession for Part 2, a chronicle of the long, painful path from shock and betrayal to the beginnings of healing and understanding. I have learned that true love is not a static ideal but a dynamic process that requires constant nurturing, open communication, and the courage to confront even the most devastating truths. While our journey is far from complete, and the scars of our past will forever be a part of us, I now see them as symbols of our resilience, a testament to our ability to rebuild, to forgive, and to grow stronger in the face of life's harshest revelations. As I close my journal on this chapter, I make a silent vow to continue striving for a future where every secret is met with open hearts and where every wound, no matter how deep, is allowed the time to heal. With Sophie by my side and a newfound commitment to truth, I step forward into the uncertain light of tomorrow, determined to turn our painful past into the foundation of a love that is richer, deeper, and, ultimately, unbreakable. I woke one chilly morning with the remnants of our long, stormy past still echoing in my mind, a heavy quilt of memories and unshed tears weighing upon my heart. The necklace, its delicate chain and tiny engraved message, "For my always," had haunted me ever since that day it arrived on our doorstep, wrapped in impeccable paper and a note that betrayed everything I thought I knew about Sophie. Over the months that followed that fateful delivery and the painful confrontation it unleashed, I had wandered through a labyrinth of conflicting emotions, rage and betrayal, sorrow and regret, and, most perplexingly, a flicker of hope that perhaps our love could be rebuilt, even if it meant facing the deepest parts of ourselves. In the early days, my nights were spent in a haze of relentless questions. Every moment, every little detail of Sophie's behavior, took on a new, piercing significance. I began to see our shared routines, the quiet evenings, the mundane chatter over dinner, even the gentle rhythm of our laughter, as hollow echoes of a facade that had long concealed hidden truths. I had meticulously documented every change, the subtle shifts in her tone when she spoke of work, the slight hesitation in her eyes when she passed by our jewelry box, the unmistakable memory of her trembling hands when she opened that beautifully wrapped gift. All these moments, once inconsequential, now wove a tapestry of uncertainty and heartbreak that I couldn't escape. I spent countless hours alone, pacing the dim corridors of our apartment, searching for an explanation in the silence that had descended upon us. My journal became my only refuge, a battered leather-bound notebook filled with frantic scribbles, each line a desperate attempt to capture the storm inside me. I wrote, every secret, every hidden engraving, cuts deep into the heart of trust. How do I mend a love that is built on illusions? I wrote until the ink blurred, until the pages were soaked with tears and the raw honesty of a man grappling with the realization that the woman I loved had a past I never truly knew. The pain was excruciating, yet within that agony, I sensed a strange call to confront not just her secrets but my own shortcomings, to examine the silent spaces where my love might have faltered in understanding her. Therapy sessions became a constant in those dark days, a lifeline in the swirling sea of my emotions. Dr. Ramirez, our compassionate guide, helped us explore the shadows of our past with a gentle insistence on truth. Healing, she would say, is not about erasing what has been done, it's about weaving the scars into a tapestry that reflects the strength of your shared journey. Her words, soft and deliberate, echoed in my mind during long, sleepless nights. In our sessions, Sophie slowly opened up about the loneliness that had driven her to cling to fragments of a past love, Andrew, a man from a time when she believed in the fierce, unyielding passion of youth. She spoke of moments when the weight of our daily routine made her feel invisible, a quiet isolation that grew like ivy around her heart. I felt trapped, Daniel, she confessed in one session, her voice trembling, like I was living a life not of my own making. The necklace was a reminder, a piece of my past that I thought belonged only to me, a token of a time when I felt seen and alive. Her confession was both heartbreaking and deeply human, revealing layers of vulnerability that I had never known. Even as our sessions progressed, the journey toward understanding was far from linear. There were nights when I would lie awake, haunted by the image of that engraved message, the cold, metallic truth that had upended our lives. I found myself drifting between anger and sorrow, sometimes consumed by the bitter sting of betrayal, and other times overcome with a desperate need to empathize with her pain. I began to question whether our love had ever been as complete as I believed, or if it had always been a fragile construct held together by unspoken assumptions and the comfort of routine. The revelation that Sophie had clung to a memory, a part of her that she had never shared, cut deeply into my soul. Yet, in that same revelation, I also glimpsed the potential for transformation, a chance to build something new, something that acknowledged the imperfections of our past and embraced them as stepping stones toward a more honest future. There came a day, one of those rare, quiet afternoons when the world seemed to pause in anticipation, that Sophie and I sat together on our back porch. The sky was a gentle blue, the air soft with the scent of blooming lilacs, and for a brief moment, it felt as if the universe itself was offering us a respite from our turbulent emotions. We held hands in silence, the warmth of her touch mingling with the cool breeze, a delicate promise that perhaps the wounds of the past could one day heal. "Daniel," she began, her voice a whisper almost lost in the rustle of leaves, "I want to be completely honest with you from now on. I know that I've kept a part of my past hidden out of fear, and I'm so sorry for the pain that secret has caused. I'm ready to share everything with you, every part of who I was, who I am, and who I hope to become." Her words, so simple and sincere, cut through the fog of my despair like a beam of light, igniting within me a cautious spark of hope. In that moment, I realized that our journey toward healing was not about erasing the past, but about embracing it, acknowledging every mistake, every moment of silence, and every hidden truth as a necessary piece of our shared history. I replied softly, "I love you, Sophie. And while I'm hurting, I believe that if we face our truths together, we can rebuild a love that is even stronger than before. I want to know everything, the good, the bad, and the parts that we're too scared to speak about. Only then can we truly move forward." There was a vulnerability in her eyes that I had never seen before, a raw, unfiltered admission of her deepest fears and the hope that by sharing them, we might find our way back to each other. Over the following months, our lives slowly began to shift. We established new rituals, a nightly ritual of candid conversation, where every word was a step toward dismantling the walls that had grown between us. We spent long evenings in the living room, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating our faces as we spoke about our days, our regrets, and our dreams. I began to see the subtle changes in Sophie, the way her eyes, once clouded with hidden sorrow, now held a spark of openness, as if she were finally ready to let me into the depths of her heart. We returned to old memories as well, revisiting photographs and mementos from our early days, not as a means to relive the past, but to remind ourselves of the love that had once defined us and that we still hope to reclaim. I continued to document every step of this painful journey in my journal, filling its pages with the raw, unfiltered truth of our struggles. I wrote about the nights when the past surged back unbidden, when the engraved necklace would flash before my eyes like a phantom reminder of secrets kept. I wrote of the therapy sessions with Dr. Ramirez and Dr. Carter, who both urged us to see that while the pain of betrayal could never be fully erased, it could be transformed into a catalyst for growth, a painful lesson that, if embraced, could lead to a deeper, more resilient connection. True intimacy, one of them had said, is not about perfection, but about the courage to be vulnerable, to share every part of yourself, even the parts that hurt. Those words echoed in my mind as I slowly began to forgive, not by forgetting, but by understanding that our love was capable of evolving beyond the pain. One particular evening, on a clear night with a tapestry of stars overhead, Sophie took a deep breath and handed me a small, handwritten letter. "Daniel," she said softly, "I've been writing this for weeks, trying to find the words to express how sorry I am, and how much I need you to understand the pain I've been carrying." With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter and began to read. Each word was a window into her soul, revealing the deep-seated loneliness, the overwhelming pressure, and the fear that had driven her to seek solace in a past that she had long tried to bury. She spoke of Andrew, of a time when she had believed in a passion so fierce that it burned away the confines of convention, and how that memory had lingered, transforming into a secret that she was too afraid to share. Her confessions were raw and unapologetic, a mosaic of pain and regret that left me reeling, yet also stirred something deep within me, a recognition that our love had always been imperfect, that our past was woven with threads of both beauty and sorrow. That night, as I closed the letter and looked into Sophie's tear-filled eyes, I felt a surge of conflicted emotions. I was overwhelmed by hurt and betrayal, yet I could also see the vulnerability, the longing for redemption, in her gaze. I whispered, "I need time, Sophie, time to understand and to heal. But I still love you, and I believe that if we continue to be honest with each other, if we truly open our hearts, we can rebuild something even more authentic than before. It was a fragile promise, a tentative pledge to let the raw pain transform into a shared journey of healing, rather than a wedge that would forever drive us apart. In the weeks that followed, our days became a tapestry of small, courageous steps. We returned to our home with a renewed commitment to vulnerability. Every evening, we sat together and talked, sometimes for hours, about everything we had once taken for granted and every fear that had festered in the silence. I began to see that the scars we carried, though permanent, could also be a testament to our resilience, a map of the battles we had fought and a reminder that we had the strength to face the darkest truths. With each honest conversation, the gap between us narrowed, and slowly, I felt the bitter sting of betrayal soften into the gentle ache of a love that was trying to mend. I started to write again in my journal, not with the furious scribbles of heartbreak, but with reflective, measured words that chronicled our progress. I recorded the moments when Sophie's smile returned, when the twinkle in her eyes hinted at the woman I had fallen in love with, and when our shared laughter filled the room once more. I wrote about the therapy sessions that had become our sanctuary, where every tear and every honest admission was a step toward reclaiming the trust that had once seemed lost forever. In every wound, I wrote one night, lies the potential for healing. Our pain is a part of us, but it does not have to define us. With every step we take together, we are building something new, a love that is scarred, yes, but also stronger for having endured the storm. As summer ripened and the world around us bloomed with the promise of new beginnings, our relationship began to transform. The dark clouds of the past, though not entirely gone, gradually gave way to a softer, more forgiving light. One afternoon, under the gentle warmth of a golden sun, Sophie and I sat together on our back porch, the air perfumed by the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming jasmine. We talked about our future, about dreams that we had long forgotten, about the possibility of rediscovering not only each other but also ourselves. "Daniel," she said, voice steady and clear, "I want us to build a future that honors every part of who we are, even the painful parts. I want our love to be a place where every secret, every scar, is transformed into a story of survival and hope." I squeezed her hand, feeling the gentle pressure of her touch, and replied, "I want that too, Sophie. I want to embrace every truth, no matter how painful, and let it guide us to a love that is real, honest, and unbreakable." That afternoon, as we watched the sun set in a riot of color over the horizon, I felt a quiet certainty bloom in my heart, a realization that while the past would always be a part of us, it no longer had to dictate our future. The engraved necklace, once a symbol of hidden pain, had become a turning point, a reminder that every secret, when met with courage and honesty, can pave the way to a more authentic connection. I resolved then that I would continue to strive for that truth, to let every tear and every whispered confession guide me on this journey of redemption. I knew that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but I also believed that every small act of vulnerability was a step toward rebuilding what had once been shattered. Now, as I sit here on a quiet summer evening with Sophie by my side, her head resting gently on my shoulder, the soft hum of our shared world a comforting backdrop, I reflect on the journey we have traversed. The pain of betrayal, the anguish of secrets, and the raw honesty of our confessions have all left their mark on our souls. Yet, in those marks, I see the evidence of our resilience, the undeniable truth that even in our darkest moments, there is a chance for rebirth. I have learned that love is not a pristine, unchanging ideal, but a living, breathing entity that must be nurtured with openness, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to truth. As the stars emerge one by one in the velvety night sky and a gentle breeze whispers through our open window, I close my journal with a profound sense of hope. I know that there will be days when the wounds of the past will ache anew, when the memory of that engraved necklace will resurface in a flash of pain. But I also know that with every honest conversation, every shared moment of vulnerability, we are building a future where secrets no longer define us, a future where trust, once shattered, is slowly, painstakingly rebuilt through the relentless power of love. This is my final confession, a chronicle of the journey from betrayal to healing, from hidden scars to a love reborn in the light of honesty. I choose to believe that our future is not written in the ink of our past mistakes, but in the hopeful, unyielding courage to face every truth together. With every sunrise, I renew my commitment to us, a commitment to listen, to understand, and to love, despite every secret and every scar. And so, with a heart that bears the marks of our shared pain yet beats with the promise of tomorrow, I step forward into the unknown, determined to forge a future defined by our courage, our vulnerability, and the enduring strength of a love that has weathered the storm.